Hello world, this is PG.biz, of course, and a big welcome to, as my co-host Brian Baglow would put it, our lovely listeners, trying to get my Scottish accent in there, but he does it so well. And yes, he's not here, but I'm not lonely. In fact, I'm far from lonely because I have a team of experts today. I have two unique perspectives on how you can harness A/B testing to develop winning campaigns and game concepts. So let me introduce them because I'm excited. We have Nina Oblak. Nina.
Hello, Peggy. Hi.
Great to have you and your first podcast. So this is exciting for both of us. You are an ASO team lead at Outfit7. And for people who don't know Nina, you started off your career at Wooga in gaming, then joined Outfit7 more than 5 years ago, started as a UA manager, and then moved to ASO. So you've seen it from a number of perspectives, and we all know UA and ASO are so intertwined. And what you don't know about Nina, though, is that she wanted to be a sports commentator and call the shots in her team. Now she's got a team of ASO experts. So I think, Nina, we can say you have achieved that.
Yeah, thanks. It was quite a ride, right? From going from this idea of what I want to do to where I am now.
And you say it on your website as well, a dynamic force in mobile gaming with a portfolio of chart-topping games, 20 plus games now downloaded worldwide over 20 billion times. We have a lot to learn from you. And we're going to hear another perspective because we have Ryan Goeden. He is business development lead at Kayzen. Great to have you.
Yeah, likewise. Nice to be here, Peggy. This is also my first podcast, so quite exciting.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I would have never thought that, Ryan, because I've run into you at so many shows, and I have to say that you have it. You have the ability to communicate. Great to have you. A little bit about you as well. You have been in mobile advertising for over a decade, previously working in Mobi, Kachava. And hey, a little bit about you when you're not working, when you're not doing what you're doing, which is working with major app advertisers on UA and retargeting. Well, you're giving yoga lessons and giving good energy as well.
Yep, I'd say so, or at least I try to. It's the aspiration. But yeah, I'm a qualified yoga instructor and I teach a class every Saturday.
So you have good energy and we want good energy. So it's a good setup. It feels to me like you're setting off some sparks. So that's it. We're fired up. We're going to dive in. I want to start with you, Nina. What took you on this route? When did you say to yourself, that's it, A/B testing is going to give us more than just a decision on creatives. It's going to give us much more about our strategy.
Yeah, so I would say we first started using this approach when we had a question of what store assets to use going into soft launch for one of our games. So the store assets, these are like icons, screenshots. It can also be a name of the app. And we know that although like native tests on the stores, these are Google experiments and Apple's PPOs, they're great, but you cannot do them if the app is not live on the store yet. So, and we had this problem already in the production phase. So what we did is we created these fake pages internally in Outfit7 that essentially they look and feel like the real pages, but they are not, you open them in browser. So, and we connected them with the ad campaigns, and this is how we drive traffic to them. And then we just observed what players are doing on those pages. And we also observed like the first part of funnel, but maybe I will explain that a little more into details later. And because we are very lucky and we have like a big user base, we have a lot of games, we have a lot of DAU, MAU, so we were able to use this internal cross-promotion network to drive this traffic. But we have a limit here, right? Because this is only like cross-promotion traffic is only like a part of distribution, but we could not cover organic traffic or not even the players who are playing other games beside ours. So here is where Kayzen came into play as well, because they helped us reach those users. And yeah, like you said, it helped us answer so many questions, not just from store optimization, but also like for verifying concepts or defining what kind of art we use and so on. There are so many use cases we were able to cover with that.
That's what's interesting about this, is that you're able to stretch this model, this approach to A/B testing. You said it yourself, testing content, creatives, concept, so many different use cases, maybe even a couple that you came up with that we're not always thinking about.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, we fastly recognized that this is not just something that we could use for the distribution purpose and for the optimization of the store assets and the conversion rate optimization there, but it can be used in any cycle of the game production as early as the idea. For example, when you get the idea of how the game mechanic should look like or anything like that, you can just test that. Or for example, the art of the game, is it 2D, is it 3D, is it more real or more cartoony? And then marketability of the app. Will the users, like when we present them the ad and then take them to the stores, will they even react to it? Will they like the ad? Will they download the game? So this is everything we can test very early on with this setup. And then later in production, we can see, like, for example, which features are more like attractive, or like which worlds, if we have multiple worlds in the game, our users like best. And this is like the information that I think it's very beneficial also for the production team, for the game team. And I think a part of it is also because this is like a two-step funnel. So in the first step, we have the ad, so the creative. So this is where we like first hook the players and then drive them to the fake storefront. And here we observe, like, how do they react to this game, like the players. Do they watch the video? What's the duration? How many seconds do they watch it? Do they click on it? And the most important KPI here, I would say, is click-through rate. And then we have the second part of the funnel, and this is the store, right? But in our case, the fake store, not the real store. So once the player lands on the store, we can see what he or she does there, like scrolling through the screenshots, like which one do they pay more attention to or enlarge? Do they read ratings and reviews and description? Because, we have a heat map behind it, so we can really see like where they touch and what they do and so on. And in this part of the funnel, like conversion rate is the most important metric.
What we're hearing when you explain all of the different things you can do and address and even model here is what's possible when a marketer has insight into the data and really owns the approach, really has control here. Ryan, you work with a lot of companies, not just here with Outfit7. I mean, how do marketers need to approach this? How do they make it their own approach, their own A/B testing, basically owning this, really?
You mentioned the word control, and I think that that's really an important concept here. We all know that it's quite a struggle for a lot of advertisers to really control all aspects of their campaign. Everything down to bidding logic and optimization decisions. A lot of that gets delegated to various ad platforms to do that work themselves. And so it's that lack of control here. I think we all know that outside of the walled gardens, most of the mobile app advertising is still dominated by sort of black box ad platforms. And of course, black box is a bit of a kind of catch-all term that means a number of different things, from like lack of transparency over campaign data, using managed service, using kind of set and forget algorithms that do all the bidding for you. And then I think as well, really kind of a lack of an intuitive UI that's going to help you kind of get into the weeds and tinker around with what's going on in your campaign and making your own sort of bidding logic. And so really, marketers don't really know what's happening on their campaigns before the user installs. Now, with that said, they know a lot about what happens after the user installs. We all know that device IDs have been kind of normal for the ecosystem for well over a decade now. And while that's going away, eventually, what that has done is it's allowed marketers to really, one, do deterministic attribution and measure long-term value of the users that they get. And so they really focus their attention on what's happening after the user installs and being very precise and sophisticated in that, which is great. But what it does is it creates a little bit, at least what I see, is a little bit of a skill gap where when it comes time to start going and really being precise with the campaigns you're running, don't really know how to do that. What vendors am I going to use? What are the features that I need to be able to do this? There's a little bit of a skill gap there. And so I think that that's really inhibiting advertisers from, like I said, taking control of their campaigns and really getting into the weeds of how those campaigns are run and how things ultimately bid at the end of the day.
Bring up a great point, because that's just it. We're doing this very differently. You talk about a skills gap. Let me ask you, Nina, it's a team effort. You have the team, you have the tech, execution matters. What is required in the team to do this really well, to get that, wash, rinse, repeat effort and outcome?
Yeah, so we have this system really in place internally in-house, though. We have, on one hand, in the distribution, we have product marketing manager and ASO manager. They are the ones responsible for defining the test. So what are the goals? What is the timeline? The directions that we want to test. So which will be the testing groups. And then we, of course, need the 2D artist or the video production team to take care of the assets, both for the store and the ads. Then we have IT managers who create those fake pages, and they have to put the system for tracking the store events also there, right? So that we can really get all the data then to analyze later. And then, of course, the data scientist, this is the person who is involved from a very start to help up to set up the test, to make sure to check it all the time, that everything is doing great, to collect the data, to analyze the data, and of course make some conclusions. And I forgot, in between is also, of course, a UR manager, and that's the person who is who knows the campaign part in and out. And with that, I mean cross promotion. So in our ecosystem, but also paid UA. So they know the targeting, they know the reach, and it's really a group effort. And we try to sit down at least in the beginning and at the end of each test together, to discuss and then to check the results, and everyone is contributing their knowledge and their feedback. And we adjust as we go. For example, I mentioned heat map before. We haven't always had that, but then we found really useful to see where they actually users click on the store. Or for example, we changed not a long time ago also the method on the analytical side of how to determine which group that we are testing is the winning one, because now we also take into consideration the markets of where the users are coming, and also the size of the revenue they represent in our whole revenue share. So for example, if we get a lot of installs from India, but they are maybe not, those users or players are maybe not worth that much, so that we don't base our conclusions just because India is such a big share in the test. So we try to balance these things out. And yeah, it's it adapts through time, and that's it. Maybe one thing also that I think it's worth mentioning is that we constantly check, question ourselves, are we on the right path? Because market changes a lot, and technology changes.
Keeping in mind that we also have some indies in our audience who might not have that kind of a resource, if you had to describe your routine for this approach to split testing, because I can start small and I can get big results. We'll get to your results in a moment, massive, but you have to start somewhere. What would you say where smaller teams could start?
Let's say if the team is really small and they don't have resources to do that, there are always third-party options, available. So there are a lot of companies out there who offer that, to do that for you, to build this kind of fake pages and also to analyze the results and so on. And then maybe when you expand and you have knowledge on how to do it, you can go and start building in-house.
Just to kind of riff off of that idea too, because I think this is something that's worth it for indie developers to keep in mind, is that doing this kind of A/B split testing over programmatic advertising actually delivers quite a lot of bang for your buck. We're not talking massive user acquisition budgets that have tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars behind them. We're talking hundreds to low thousands of dollars to actually invest into this and get really, really valuable data from it. You don't have to go and take out a fundraising round just to be able to do something like this. It's actually quite simple that can be done with relatively limited resources.
Yeah, and that is very true also because, we started with our cross promotion network, but not everyone has that luxury of having their own like ecosystem. And this is where like programmatic really comes into play, because with that, you will be able, like Ryan said, like reach a lot of players and also very targeted players, which is a really, really important thing as well. If you're trying something, testing for something that it's really niche, you don't have to spend thousands and thousands for this.
That's always good news. I'm sure people are like, yeah, that was already the highlight of the show. But of course, there's more than that. And you brought it up yourself, Nina, talking about how you can reach and target players, and some in new and different ways because you're able to see the data differently. Tell me something about what you were able to do differently, maybe even some surprises, because it's always when you can see all aspects of the data that you find some amazing consistencies or correlations.
Yeah, so I think one thing that was very important for us was like going from just testing on our existing user base to expand to the players that are playing other games. So I don't know if the listeners how well they know Outfit7, but we have this very well known IP. It's called Talking Tom and Friends, and we have a bunch of apps in that ecosystem. So, but the player base, it's more casual, it's younger audience, and so on. And then, for example, when we were developing a different game that was a strategy RPG game, of course, if we would test on this kind of players, we would not get relevant results, but because this is not the target audience, so it wouldn't really help us. With the help of Kayzen, we actually managed to reach the players who are playing in like other games as well, like because they can get through them through different networks and so on, and they even offer like a targeting that it's like more niche, like for example for the strategy games, and that's like, yeah, that was a game changer. There are not many things on the market available for that, but because for the A/B test to be successful and the results to be reliable, you need this control environment. This is very, very important. So, and you need this equal split of traffic, which maybe sounds a little abstract, but I can explain a little bit more in detail. So when you have like different groups, it's very important that everything is the same for them, that you have one variable that it's different, but everything else it's kind of the same. So they have to have the same number of users, so the same sample size that get into them. You need the same traffic mix. So if you have multiple platforms and multiple countries and even multiple games that are coming from, you really try to aim that they are kind of the same for, the same mix, so that it's not biased. So you don't want to have group A coming just from strategy games and group B just players from puzzle games, because then the results, they're not really helpful. And we really managed to achieve that with the help of Ryan and the team.
I'm hearing something also in here that's very intriguing about not targeting your user base. And it's actually allowing you said a game changer. I mean, like quite literally, if you were saying, oh, we're in casual, but we want to go into strategy, or we're seeing all this mixing and melding between the genres anyway, hyper casual is hybrid casual, and casual is looking more like strategy, and everybody has a story narrative or something. I mean, Ryan, is there something here about also allowing you to test the waters a little bit? If you're saying, oh yeah, we've got a whole casual audience, but we really want to look at this other genre, this sort of allows you to test it without having to take the plunge.
Yeah, I think that's a great point to make here. And what I see here is that there's really a real opportunity here to do this very kind of detailed, granular targeting that allows you to create two audiences that are similar with each other. In programmatic advertising, there are very rich data signals that come through the bid stream. Sorry to use kind of whatever esoteric language here, but when we get these sort of bid requests coming from different publishers and exchanges, it's actually chocked full with a lot of very rich contextual signals. You've got things like kind of device level stuff, like what's the make and model, what's the operating system and the version. You've got more creative signals around ad formats and sizes. But you also have like supply and inventory signals, like what is the publisher that's actually showing this ad? What exchange did it come through? I'd say, reckon there's probably a few dozen signals that comes through every single bid request. Now, that does not mean that every ad platform out there is taking advantage of this and using it, or say opening up a user interface that allows an advertiser to do this kind of targeting, but it does exist. And there are ad platforms that go and create this kind of ability here. If you're working with, say, an ad platform that doesn't expose all or most of these types of signals, you might actually be tricked into thinking that you're doing an A/B test on an audience that appears to be similar. Like, let's say you want to go and target iOS users in the United States, and you want it to be, say, an iPhone 12 or higher. You might be able to find a platform that would allow you to target to that level, and it might make you think that, hey, I am in fact targeting the same audience here with two different things that I want to test. But what you're not realizing is that there's also, what is the publisher behind that? We talked about maybe wanting to target publishers that have a particular, that are of a particular genre that maybe matches the audience you're trying to go after. Well, if you don't know what publisher you're targeting, that campaign that you think is actually targeting the same audience might be distributed across a wide range of publishers. And so having a system that would allow you to, say, target specific publishers or maybe a genre of publishers is fundamental to this.
Building up that science to make this similar to what our other data sets were. There may be incomplete data sets, but they are nonetheless important. It would be fascinating. Maybe I'm giving you guys an idea, get together and come up with some sort of resource that says, here's like 6 or 7 signals that you're able to get, but you didn't know what to do with them. Well, here's what you can do, get to use cases, which brings me to my next area, which is exactly that. Setting up a campaign like a pro, Nina, because you obviously know what you're doing. And I'll call you a pro, even if you probably won't do it yourself. You're probably too modest. Give me a tip or a best practice that is something that's really crushing it for you.
We really try with setting up the campaigns for tests to mimic the real life, how the campaign will go in real life. Or let's say maybe with different words, after we launch a game, where do we expect to get the traffic from? And with that, I mean, which geos, which platform, even which network, and so on, and try to really find those users. So I think it's very, very important that you know beforehand who your users are, where you can find them, and then really try to mimic as much as possible this kind of campaigns that you will have later on. Also for the testing, be kind of mindful of costs. If you, for example, know that US is your most important market, but it can get pretty expensive. Find a geo that will behave similarly, like in the campaigns, but maybe even later on for the post-install data. Like, for example, take Canada for US, or I don't know. There are like multiple combinations that you can use, as a proxy for a certain market. And for us, like, equal speed is very, very important, so that everyone gets an equal share.
Ryan, what about yourself? You're not a marketer. Well, you are, all about marketing, but you're working with so many different games, studios, companies. Maybe there's a best practice, something that you're seeing them do that's like, hey, this is it. This is how to set up your campaign like a pro.
There's 2 things that I've been thinking about here. One I think is quite high level, and it almost seems silly to say, but I think it's worth saying here. And that is that before you even think about what is the right sort of tactic for a given A/B test, just do the A/B test. Go and find a way to do this. Like I said, I talked about that skill gap, and I think that can be a little bit of an inhibitor to taking the plunge and doing something like this.
That's very true.
Don't. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it is.
And this is where I have to give kudos to Outfit7, because as much as I do sales and I want to take credit for that, it wasn't like I came to them with this idea. They actually went and did the research across different vendors. They came to us. I spoke to numerous people there. We spoke about all kinds of different use cases before sort of honing in on this. They were willing to take the plunge and then did their due diligence to understand what was out there. And so I would encourage everybody, first, before anything, just do that. Get yourself in that mindset that I'm going to take this plunge and do it. Then a second thing that I think is much more detailed, but it's worth mentioning here, and that is that if you're going to do any kind of A/B testing and you want to try to hit the same audience with two different ideas, make sure that you're paying attention as well to the exchange through which this ad is being served. So, you've got the publishers that are showing the ads, you've got the advertisers like Outfit7, and then you've got all these technology providers. So you got these exchanges in the middle that are, managing these auctions. And each one of them has their own sort of nuanced way of getting that ad into a publisher app. They all typically have an SDK that goes ahead and serves it. And I'll just say there is a lot of nuance from one exchange to the other in how those ads get rendered. And if you're not factoring in exchange as part of your targeting criteria, you might introduce some bias or some variability that you didn't really anticipate just due to the way that exchange's SDK works.
Just at a high level, paying attention to how they're rendered is a big difference.
Yeah. And even things like the size of the clickable area around a call to action button. Some of them, are take the whole screen, and other ones are actually just the button. So it's a lot of these nuance here that can impact, your click-through or conversion rates.
Well, Nina, you made the point yourself earlier about your team. It's aligning marketing, UA, everything, all about optimizing thanks to the granular data that you are getting. So tell us just exactly that. So what have you actually been able to do because you have this visibility?
Although the idea of the split testing was initially for the distribution optimization, especially for the icons and screenshots and like the assets that are on the store, but we found out that it's like beneficial also for the games team, or for example, when we were launching my Talking Tom Friends app, where there are like 6 different characters, we created a test like where each group, so we had like 6 groups in the test, featured only one character on every screenshot, on the icon, on the ad. So the whole funnel was just like one character was the star. And then we compared, like we created the order on in which like we defined which one users like the best or which one they like the least. And that then impacted like what we put on the icons, but also other promo materials and so on.
So who are the best loved characters?
It's the Tom. It's Tom. It's always Tom and Angela there. Yeah.
So there's great ways to use this in different ways, right? Not just thinking about soft launch or not just thinking about stages, but all of it. What are some of the marketers doing that you're working with, or you're just seeing them where there's like, hey, they're pushing the envelope. This is really, really cool.
Right. Yeah. So if you imagine like everything that happens up to the install, thus far, that's been kind of something that the ad platforms own. They're focusing on impressions and clicks and click-through rates and stuff, trying to get you to the install. And then it's the game developers like Outfit7 that are looking at everything from the install onwards, tracking the installs and then in-app purchases, trying to relate that back to marketing channels. But actually, for those that really want to get into the weeds here and own this data and kind of start looking at it, if you can get your hands on the full data set, which you can do by doing programmatic advertising, you can actually get a full funnel data set from impression to click to install to in-app purchase that's specific for your app or your campaign. Now, I've seen advertisers that'll actually take this once they get the data from the ad platform, get their install and event data, combine that all together. They can actually start developing their own algorithms to drive their own user acquisition. So it's basically taking that same kind of transparency over data, but now how do we turn that into some type of buying logic for a UA campaign?
So when I do an interview for PG.biz, we also say, hey, we've got so-and-so guest coming up. We've got something in the works. What would you like to hear? What would you like to ask? So I've picked a few questions that we got in. And I'll start off with you, Nina. Biggest personal mistake. There's a lot of trial and error here to what you're talking about. Share one.
Yeah, I would say the biggest mistake, and this is like, it can still, happen, is when we don't define hypothesis on the test very well. So then it's just a waste of test, If it's not a well set up or defined test of what exactly we want to test in each group, then even if we get like a best performer, we are not able to go from there because we don't know what was working. Or if it's something that creates the bias, or if it's not just one variable that is different, again, you cannot pinpoint of what was working, what was not. And it's not just, and it's actually, then it's a waste of resources because everyone invests the time and effort. It's a waste of money because tests are not for free anyway, a waste of time because you're losing a week or two or even more to set up, run the test, analyze, and so on.
You, Ryan, you do know, even from your own life and your other day job, in a sense, well, your once a week job, how to keep energy levels high. What's a tip to keep teams on track, to keep the momentum? Because it's going to be, like Nina said, trial and error, and you got to have some confidence, test your test. What's a good piece of advice from that level?
Okay, that's a good question here. I'm gonna riff off of what you said, Nina, about the degree of collaboration that existed for you guys to put all this together. And I would just connect that with what I see motivates us as a company at Kaizen, and it's the spirit of collaboration. I think the more eyeballs that are on it, the more people in the room talking about this together, the more excited people get. And when the going gets tough, or a test fails, or you make a bad hypothesis, or you screw something up, you've got everybody to kind of put your arms around each other and soldier on. And so I would say just make it a collaborative effort. And just have everybody have like the test of the test, just a spirit of experimentation. We're all in this together. If mistakes are made, hey, we can accept that because we're all in the same mission here.
Exactly that. Always on experimentation. You go to conferences. I go to them all the time. What do you need to be a great marketer? You need to be curious, which is last question to you. Exactly that, Nina. What's a soft skill that you need to have solid results now in marketing and ASO and what you're doing?
Oh, that's a good question. I would definitely say that you have to be curious like you did, because the things are changing so fast, so that you're trying different things out. Also, we see that the player base, they do change, the tastes are changing through years, and maybe something that did not work last year, maybe it will work this year. So be brave and go sometimes, out of the box and try new things, don't be afraid.
I want to thank you both so much for sharing so much good information there, good advice, best practice. One amazing show. Thank you so much, Ryan. Thank you so much, Nina.
Thank you, Peggy.
Yeah.
It was a pleasure.
Yeah.
This show is all about how to do your job better, how to make an amazing game, how to market it, and you have a say. So if you have a story or know someone we need to shine a light on, then we would love to hear from you.
We want to hear from you. We want to reflect the reality of the mobile games market in all its wonderful complexity and strangeness. So if you have any suggestions for us, if you have any feedback for us, you can always get in touch. You can email us at podcast@pocketgamer.biz. You can find us on Twitter @PGBiz, and you can reach out to us through the pocketgamer.biz website. If you're interested in listening to all of our podcasts, you can find them at pocketgamer.biz/podcast, and we would love to hear your thoughts on future shows.
And we've got you covered on all the major platforms, so subscribe to the audio podcast, as Brian said. Look for us on YouTube. If you want to read it, hey, you can do that too, because we have a companion post for you as well on the pocketgamer.biz website.
Tune in again for the next edition of the pocketgamer.biz podcast, and we look forward to speaking to you in the near future. Until then, I'm Brian Baglow.
I'm Peggy Anne Salz, and that's a wrap until next week.